Picture a realm where the laws of nature bend into a majestic blue-tinted dream. Deep within this lightless pressure cooker, methane molecules are crushed into a crystalline drizzle of pure diamonds that fall silently toward a scorching heart. It is a place of impossible extremes, where the most precious stones on Earth are merely the common weather of a distant giant. Imagine currents of gas screaming at supersonic speeds, faster than any jet, yet moving through the thin upper air with an eerie and absolute quiet. These invisible rivers flow retrograde, chasing a sunset that takes 80 years to arrive. This cosmic structure is a masterpiece of fluid motion, unburdened by the friction of continents or the resistance of stone. Surprisingly, a massive frozen moon orbits this world in total defiance, spinning backward against the rotation of the sapphire orb that captured it eons ago. This celestial hostage is a bright, frosty jewel that exhales dark nitrogen geysers into the void. It stands as a silent testament to the raw, gravitational power that commands the farthest borders of our sun's influence. If we were to look closer at the room around you, we would find a sanctuary of perfect stillness and total security. You're safe in the soft embrace of your bed, shielded from the crushing depths and the freezing vacuum by the warmth of your own home. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, drifting peacefully toward the edge of the known universe. Your physical form is anchored by the gentle pull of the earth, a steady and comforting gravity that ensures your absolute safety. The blankets provide a heavy, warm layer of insulation that separates you from the frantic energy of the waking world. As you surrender to the stillness, your mind becomes a silent traveller, prepared to cross billions of miles of empty space. This quiet room is the threshold of a grand and cinematic voyage into the deepest blue mystery imaginable. Every muscle in your body is now a part of the silence, resting in a state of total, unburdened preparation. The journey begins where the solar wind finally begins to fade and the stars take on a deeper, more permanent glow. Now, let the light of the inner worlds fade into a distant memory as your mind turns toward the absolute horizon. The transition is seamless, a quiet movement from the familiar into the magnificent azure mystery. Gaze outward into the absolute farthest reaches of our solar system, where a profound and tranquil silence reigns supreme over the void. Gaze outward into the absolute farthest reaches of our solar system, where a profound and tranquil silence reigns supreme over the void. Here, suspended flawlessly in the cosmic dark, rests a magnificent monumental sphere of pure, unbroken azure. The mesmerizing deep blue tint of this lonely world is not a mere optical illusion, but a brilliant ongoing trick of atmospheric chemistry, playing out on a truly planetary scale. Deep within this endless, swirling ocean of alien gas, vast concentrations of methane actively shape the very light that manages to traverse the billions of miles to reach it. As the faint, exhausted rays of the distant sun finally pierce the uppermost cloud decks, the planet's atmospheric methane acts as a colossal, merciless filter. It eagerly and completely absorbs the warmer red and infrared wavelengths of the incoming solar spectrum, swallowing them forever into the freezing pressurized depths. What reflects back out into the endless night is only the cool, soothing and vibrant spectrum of blue light. This continuous silent process of cosmic absorption and reflection creates a hypnotic glowing sapphire that stands in breathtaking contrast to the stark blackness of deep space. It remains a quiet, perpetual optical masterpiece, painted gracefully and entirely by the invisible hand of atmospheric physics. If we were to look closer at the seemingly uniform sapphire expanse, delicate and intricate textures begin to slowly reveal themselves against the deep blue canvas. Drifting silently and continuously across the immense alien atmosphere are ephemeral, exceptionally faint wisps of brilliant contrasting white. These are not comforting clouds of water vapour like those that gracefully decorate the skies of Earth, but rather ethereal, high-altitude formations of solid, instantly frozen methane ice. Riding effortlessly on the backs of unseen, supersonic atmospheric currents, These delicate crystalline structures stretch and pull into long, elegant streaks across the sweeping planetary horizon. They materialize briefly and suddenly in the unimaginably freezing upper altitudes, condensing rapidly out of the invisible, churning atmospheric gases. For a fleeting cosmic moment, they manage to catch the scarce, pale sunlight, glowing softly like fine, fragile threads of spun silver against the darkening, bruised sky. Almost as quickly as they manage to form, the wildly shifting local temperatures and the relentless tearing winds scatter them back into the unseen gaseous void. Their silent, graceful, and temporary journey across the vast equator and the swirling poles provides the only subtle visual evidence of the violently energetic weather systems churning far below. Observing their transit is akin to watching luminous phantoms glide effortlessly through a beautiful, eternal and freezing twilight. Far beyond the comforting warmth of the inner planets, this giant dwells in an astonishingly quiet, desperately dark region of the outer solar system. The sheer distance from the solar hearth is difficult for the human mind to fully comprehend or easily visualize. At nearly 3 billion miles away, the immense, life-giving star that forcefully bakes the deserts of Earth is reduced to a mere pinpoint of intense cold light. Consequently, this majestic azure sphere receives barely 1,000th of the radiant solar energy that routinely washes over our own vibrant home world. It exists in a permanent state of profound solar deprivation, bathed only in a pale, weak illumination that offers virtually zero physical heat. The environment is so utterly starved of pure sunlight that the visual distinction between high noon and absolute midnight becomes a subtle, almost academic difference. Yet, in this immense freezing isolation, the planet finds a haunting, melancholic beauty that warmer, brighter worlds can never possibly possess. The weak, distant starlight gently grazes the top of the immense atmosphere, providing just enough illumination to cast the globe in a soft, ethereal glow. It stands forever as a silent, majestic sentinel, keeping eternal watch in the frozen, lonely borderlands of the sun's rapidly fading empire. Suspended at staggering altitudes high above the main, opaque cloud deck, a second, incredibly delicate layer of alien weather silently unfolds. Here, in the thinnest, most tenuous and freezing reaches of the stratosphere, extraordinary cirrus formations take quiet shape in the near vacuum. These high-flying, ghostly clouds are incredibly sparse, composed almost entirely of microscopic ice crystals that somehow find purchase in the extreme, rarefied cold. Because they float dozens of miles directly above the much denser, storm-tossed atmospheric layers beneath them, they interact with the faint sunlight in a truly spectacular fashion. As the distant sun hangs incredibly low on the curved, endless horizon, these elevated, fragile, icy wisps successfully intercept the incoming rays. They proceed to cast impossibly long, soft and deep blue shadows straight down onto the vast, unbroken cloud deck stretching endlessly below. This continuous interplay of weak, angled light and vast vertical distance creates a breathtaking sense of depth and three-dimensional scale across the planet's face. The long, trailing atmospheric shadows visually separate the upper stratosphere from the lower abyss, perfectly highlighting the sheer, terrifying depth of the gaseous ocean. It is a continuous, mesmerizing, slow-motion shadow play, projected gracefully on the largest, most majestic curved screen imaginable. Surprisingly, the universe frequently hides its most chaotic, violently energetic realities behind a brilliant veil of utter serenity and absolute stillness. Beneath the uppermost visible layers of this world, monstrous continent-sized storms rage continuously, driven by fierce internal heat and supersonic, atmospheric shearing winds. Massive, dark, swirling vortices tear through the dense atmosphere, devouring absolutely everything in their path in a ceaseless display of terrifying, unbridled planetary fury. However, if you were to view this colossal sphere from a safe, distant cosmic vantage point, absolutely none of this raging violence is readily apparent. The vast, overarching atmospheric haze acts as a perfect, opaque visual blanket, magically smoothing out the turbulent, jagged edges of the screaming tempest below. From afar, the raging ice giant stunningly resembles nothing more than a perfectly polished, flawless, and deeply calming solid blue marble. This profound optical dichotomy is arguably one of the most mesmerizing, beautiful paradoxes to be found anywhere in the known solar system. The sheer, unfathomable scale of the massive planet entirely dwarfs its own internal chaos, compressing screaming gales and towering thunderheads into a smooth, placid, and uniform texture. It is a majestic, silent deceiver, presenting a flawless face of ultimate soothing peace, while harbouring a dark heart of eternal violent storm. Time itself seems to slow to an agonizingly patient, almost imperceptible crawl in these unimaginably distant frozen reaches of the cosmos. Because the massive planet takes over a century and a half to complete a single, sweeping orbit around the Sun, the natural progression of atmospheric seasons is incredibly protracted. As a colossal hemisphere slowly, inevitably tilts away from the weak solar light, twilight does not fall in a matter of hours, but instead stretches out over agonizingly long decades. This sluggish, majestic celestial mechanics creates a permanent, deeply dusky ambience that perpetually saturates the topmost layers of the alien atmosphere. The scarce light gradually fades through infinite, highly subtle shades of deep indigo and soft violet, lingering stubbornly on the curved horizon for an entire human lifetime. It is a lonely world entirely suspended in an endless, haunting evening, where the distant sun seems permanently, tragically caught in the very act of setting. Within this eternal, freezing dusk, the floating atmospheric gases take on a muted, incredibly soft and sleepy visual quality that defies simple description. The harsh, contrasting, and sharp shadows of terrestrial day are entirely absent, replaced by a smooth, omnidirectional gloom that perfectly matches the soothing, cold azure environment. To theoretically exist in these upper layers is to exist in a perpetual quiet lullaby of slowly fading deep and tranquil blue light. Journeying down through the uppermost, freezing haze, the visual quality of the ambient illumination undergoes a subtle, profound, and profoundly melancholy transformation. The incredibly thick, methane-rich atmosphere smoothly scatters and diffuses the already anemic solar radiation until it completely loses all sense of a single, localized source. What finally manages to permeate through to the deep atmospheric layers is a remarkably pale, diffuse, and exceptionally gentle wash of cold illumination. The visual experience is deeply, undeniably reminiscent of a perpetually overcast, heavy, snow-laden winter afternoon on Earth, just quiet moments before the final rapid plunge into night. There are absolutely no harsh glares, no sharp, defining highlights to be seen, and absolutely no physical warmth to be found in this muted, deeply alien daylight. Everything is seamlessly bathed in a flat, uniform and ghostly radiance that completely strips the chaotic environment of any sharp, sudden visual contrasts. This soothing, highly muted lighting perfectly, beautifully complements the endless, completely featureless expanse of the surrounding deep blue gaseous ocean. It naturally forces a profound sense of quiet introspection, a visual calm that perfectly and thoroughly masks the tremendous, violently crushing atmospheric pressures building invisibly all around. It is a soft, dreamlike, and heavy illumination, perfectly tailored for a giant world that slumbers perpetually in the absolute deepest, darkest outer cold. This cosmic structure is not entirely devoid of horizontal geometry, despite its overwhelmingly uniform, smooth, and seemingly perfectly spherical blue outward appearance. By gazing intently and patiently at the equatorial regions, incredibly subtle, extremely pale latitudinal bands begin to slowly emerge from the vast azure backdrop. These delicate stretched stripes are the direct result of colossal, planet-wide zonal wind currents that continuously encircle the globe with unfathomable, relentless power. The varying complex chemical compositions and differing vertical altitudes of these adjacent rushing wind streams create faint, almost imperceptible shifts in the overall atmospheric coloration. Some distinct bands appear as soft, milky ribbons of lighter cyan, while adjacent currents deepen into rich, heavily bruised shades of thick navy and dark indigo. They run perfectly, endlessly parallel to the planet's equator, silently tracing the rapid, unseen spin of the immense planet with flawless, breathtaking mathematical precision. These gentle, sweeping and massive stripes provide the otherwise featureless sphere with a highly subtle sense of rotation, specific direction, and hidden, beautifully organized structure. They are the undeniable atmospheric fingerprints of a massive world strictly and entirely governed by the absolute laws of fluid dynamics, a testament to the elegant, unseen forces shaping the gas. Against the overwhelming, visually dominant blue, these pale, stretched bands continuously offer a quiet, deeply understated, and profoundly beautiful visual rhythm. High above the swirling, violent and visible weather systems, a completely invisible but incredibly crucial chemical process quietly blankets the entire planet. An ever-present, incredibly faint atmospheric haze composed entirely of complex exotic hydrocarbons acts as a protective, gentle mist directly across the expansive stratosphere. This delicate, high-altitude invisible smog is born entirely from the violent destruction of methane molecules forcefully ripped apart by the weak yet wonderfully persistent ultraviolet light from the distant sun. As these violently broken molecules slowly and inevitably recombine in the dark, they form entirely new, significantly heavier organic compounds like ethane and acetylene that drift aimlessly in the freezing void. This continuous, completely silent rain of microscopic organic material creates a tenuous, planet-spanning and protective layer that softly absorbs and gently scatters the incoming starlight. Though completely, fundamentally invisible to the naked human eye, this immense hydrocarbon blanket fundamentally alters the thermal balance and the visual depth of the entire alien world. It actively acts as an incredibly subtle, highly effective planetary sunscreen, successfully insulating the deeper chaotic layers while simultaneously contributing to the overall smoothed-out optical illusion of the perfect sphere. This completely unseen, falling chemical mist is a constant, gentle reminder that even the most serene-looking planets are actually vast, violently active laboratories of complex alien chemistry. It is an ethereal, ghostly and silent shroud, perpetually draping the massive ice giant in an imperceptible falling layer of complex, freezing atmospheric soot. Ascending to the absolute highest, most rarefied and loneliest limits of the planet, the complex, heavy chemistry of the lower depths finally gives way to pure elemental simplicity. Here, floating gently and silently at the very edge of the pure, empty vacuum of space, the atmosphere becomes a breathtakingly frigid, absolutely serene expanse. This outermost shell is composed almost entirely of primordial hydrogen and helium, the exact same ancient, incredibly lightweight elements that originally birthed the surrounding stars. In this extreme, borderline, and deeply quiet environment, the atmospheric pressure violently drops to virtually zero, and the very concept of a blowing wind entirely ceases to exist. The sparse, freezing, and isolated gas molecules simply hang motionless in the absolute dark, tethered to the massive world below only by the weakest, most tenuous threads of planetary gravity. It is the absolute, undisputed pinnacle of atmospheric calm, a perfectly silent, frictionless transition zone suspended between the bustling, storm-tossed planetary body and the dead, completely empty cosmic void. To theoretically exist in these uppermost, unimaginably lonely layers is to experience the ultimate, profound and unbroken peace that the outer solar system has to offer. The deep, violently mesmerizing blue of the crushing methane oceans lies far, far below, while the infinite starry blackness of the expanding universe stretches out endlessly above. This delicate, completely invisible crown of primitive freezing gas remains the final, perfect, and eternally silent frontier of the majestic, endless azure expanse. Beneath that completely invisible crown of primitive freezing gas, the eternally silent frontier of the majestic, endless azure expanse gives way to a radically different, terrifyingly active reality. Leaving the perfectly still vacuum behind, the very top layers of the atmosphere begin to move with an urgency completely unmatched anywhere else in the entire solar system. Here, the atmospheric gases are not merely drifting, but are actively being whipped into a frenzy of continuous, unimaginable speed. To plunge just a few miles below the tranquil dark edge of space is to enter a realm completely dominated by supersonic atmospheric currents. The ambient winds here casually and continually break the sound barrier, sweeping entirely across the massive globe with an invisible, devastating kinetic intensity. It is a world entirely defined by its overwhelming forward momentum, where the very air itself becomes a relentless, rushing physical force. Remarkably, this incredible velocity is achieved without the chaotic, concussive roaring that typically accompanies high-speed gales on a terrestrial world. Because the gas is still incredibly diffuse at these extreme altitudes, the supersonic sweep occurs with an unsettling, profound quietness that entirely belies its raw power. The fastest winds known to human science rush through the freezing dark with the terrifying, muted stealth of a hunting predator. Clocking in at velocities that consistently exceed a staggering 1,000 miles per hour, these relentless gales represent the absolute apex of planetary weather phenomena. Travelling at speeds that would instantly shear apart any man-made structure, the freezing currents race unobstructed across the endlessly curving planetary horizon. They are driven to these astonishing extremes primarily by the complete and utter absence of any solid planetary surface. There are absolutely no jagged mountain ranges, no sprawling continental land masses, and no deep ocean trenches to interrupt the fluid flow or act as a friction brake. Without these terrestrial obstacles to sap their incredible momentum, the howling gusts are free to accelerate endlessly, building velocity over unimaginable stretches of time and space. The atmosphere behaves less like a gaseous envelope and more like an enormous, frictionless superconductor of pure, unbridled kinetic energy. As your physical body rests heavily and sinks comfortably into total relaxation against its support, allow your mind to drift safely alongside these colossal, unstoppable currents. This sheer, terrifying lack of physical resistance allows the wind to achieve a state of perfect, uninterrupted mechanical efficiency that borders on the miraculous. It is a breathtaking demonstration of raw fluid dynamics operating on a truly planetary scale, unfettered by the clumsy friction of solid rock. Interestingly, the overarching direction of these supersonic winds defies the logical, expected mechanical behaviour of a rapidly spinning celestial sphere. While the massive, icy bulk of the planet rotates eastward on its axis, the dominant, high-speed equatorial currents actively blow in a strict retrograde direction. This means the vast majority of the roaring atmospheric rivers are moving gently but forcefully against the underlying rotation of the world itself. This massive planetary scale contradiction creates a mesmerizing, highly complex system of atmospheric shearing that constantly tears at the edges of the rushing airstreams. The very sky is effectively operating in direct, endless opposition to the deep, unseen core, resulting in a continuous, grinding friction between the spinning world and its atmospheric shell. It is a bizarre, counterintuitive mechanism, like an impossibly vast conveyor belt determined to run relentlessly backward against its own massive gears. Floating within this retrograde current, one would experience the deeply disorienting sensation of flying backward into the planetary dawn rather than chasing the sunset. The immense invisible power required to force billions of tons of freezing gas to travel opposite the planet's own formidable spin is staggering to contemplate. It is a deeply alien meteorological paradigm, highlighting just how little we truly understand the bizarre inner workings of the distant ice giants. Plunging much deeper into the crushing pressurized darkness of the atmosphere, the chaotic high-speed gusts of the upper layers begin to fundamentally organize themselves. The wildly turbulent tearing eddies coalesce into immensely broad, unyielding latitudinal bands of incredibly steady, unidirectional fluid flow. These deep-seated atmospheric rivers are thousands of miles wide, carrying unfathomable volumes of highly compressed gas through the eternal sunless deep. Unlike the fleeting, easily disrupted weather patterns of a terrestrial world, these deep bands never falter, never shift, and absolutely never cease their forward movement. They form the permanent, rigid, and strictly defined circulatory system of the entire massive planet, dictating the flow of thermal energy from the equator to the poles. The immense crushing pressure at these profound depths forces the moving gas to behave with a thick, heavy consistency of a rushing fluid. Surrendering to the quiet gravity of your own resting form, feel your breathing slow to a deeply comforting rhythm that beautifully contrasts this relentless, high-pressure subterranean rushing. Encased in absolute darkness, these colossal bands flow with a terrifying mechanical consistency, completely oblivious to the ephemeral, delicate cirrus clouds passing miles above. They are the true, unstoppable, muscular structure of the planet's immense weather system, flexing endlessly in the deep, cold dark. Because this giant world is completely devoid of a solid, defining surface layer, these massive latitudinal bands are never forced to terminate or redirect their immense flow. They simply glide smoothly and continuously around the entire circumference of the planet, entirely wrapping the sphere in perfectly unbroken rings of rushing, pressurized fluid. A single, designated packet of atmospheric gas caught in this flow could theoretically travel in a perfect circle forever, never once encountering a physical shoreline. This unbroken spherical continuity allows the deep winds to achieve a state of sublime, perpetual motion that is entirely impossible on a rocky terrestrial planet. The atmospheric rivers chase their own tails endlessly around the equator, creating a perfectly enclosed, flawlessly balanced loop of immense kinetic transfer. It is a stunningly elegant system, an eternal rushing ribbon of gas perfectly suspended in the heavy, freezing gravity well of the ice giant. Without land to break the weather systems apart, the complex interplay between these continuous encircling bands becomes the sole driver of planetary climate. They slide past one another with unimaginable friction, generating massive rolling waves of atmospheric turbulence that ripple out across the endless circumference. The smooth, infinite glide of these deep currents is the foundational heartbeat of the alien world, a pulse of pure, uninterrupted motion. Picture a continuous, overwhelmingly potent, unseen force sweeping violently across the dark, actively moulding the visible weather structures of the upper atmosphere. The massive continent-sized storm systems that occasionally dot the planet's face do not simply form and dissipate in place. They are physically, forcefully carried. They act as colossal, swirling buoys, swept up and dragged effortlessly across the endless sky by the sheer, terrifying momentum of the deep winds below. These screaming, dark vortices are entirely at the absolute mercy of the invisible rivers of gas upon which they tenuously float. They are rapidly transported across thousands of miles of the curving horizon, surfing violently on the crest of the supersonic globe-spanning currents. The visual ferocity of a massive dark spot storm is merely a surface-level symptom of the deeply buried rushing engine that propels it. Watching one of these gargantuan tempests race across the azure expanse is to bear direct witness to the raw, staggering carrying capacity of the planetary winds. The invisible force easily shoulders the burden of storms larger than the entire Earth, treating them as nothing more than weightless, ephemeral atmospheric flotsam. It is a deeply humbling demonstration of scale, where even the most monstrous apocalyptic cyclones are just passive passengers on a much grander unseen journey. Despite the terrifying, mind-bending velocity at which these uppermost atmospheric currents travel, they possess an acoustic signature that is deeply, deeply unsettling. If one could somehow survive the freezing temperatures and immense speeds, the immediate physical experience of the wind would feel eerily, almost supernaturally silent. In the exceptionally thin, nearly pressureless upper atmosphere, the gas molecules are simply too far apart to effectively propagate the concussive, deafening sound waves of a typical gale. Feel the comforting, heavy stillness of your own relaxed muscles, enjoying the absolute quiet safety of your current resting place far from these soundless, rushing extremes. High above the crushing depths, the supersonic wind races past with the auditory impact of a gentle phantom whisper, entirely masking its devastating, bone-crushing kinetic potential. The mind struggles to rationally reconcile the visual reality of clouds tearing across the sky at 1,000 miles per hour with the absolute deadened acoustic void. This bizarre sensory disconnect transforms the highest altitudes into a surreal, dreamlike environment where violent speed and total silence perfectly, impossibly coexist. It is a phantom hurricane, a rushing wall of invisible, freezing gas that possesses the raw power to shatter solid stone but moves entirely without a voice. The quietness of the supersonic sweep is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the winds, a silent, invisible assassin lurking at the very edge of space, drifting far away from the rushing equatorial bands toward the extreme, freezing northern and southern axes of the world. The atmospheric dynamics shift dramatically. The perfectly parallel, globe-spanning wind currents are forcefully bent and warped by the planet's rotation, curling inward toward the absolute geographic poles. Here, the endless straight-line racing of the equator entirely collapses into a mesmerizing, deeply complex and highly structured swirling polar vortex. This colossal, spinning eye of freezing gas dominates the very top and bottom of the world, maintaining a remarkably stable, eternal, and hypnotic geometric rhythm. Unlike the chaotic, wandering storms of the mid-latitudes, the polar vortex is a permanent anchored fixture, tightly wrapping itself around the planet's invisible axis of spin. It is a perfectly organized, gargantuan whirlpool of rushing methane and hydrogen, steadily drawing the high-altitude haze downward into the darker, pressurized depths. Gazing directly down into the center of this massive, spinning sinkhole, one would see the intricate spiraling arms of the wind patterns extending outward for thousands of miles. It is a beautifully symmetrical, devastatingly powerful atmospheric engine, staring blindly out into the deep cosmic void like a dark, unblinking celestial eye. The vortex serves as the grand, swirling terminus for the whispering winds, a place where the supersonic currents finally spiral down into the unknown. The ultimate originating source of this relentless planet-wide kinetic energy is not the weak, distant and pale sun hanging small in the black sky. The faint solar radiation reaching this remote sector of the solar system is entirely insufficient to drive supersonic winds or power continent-sized tempests. Instead, the incredible atmospheric violence is driven almost entirely by immense, ancient thermal energy welling up silently from the planet's heavily hidden, scorching internal core. This primordial heat, trapped deep within the rocky heart since the very violent, chaotic birth of the solar system, slowly and forcefully radiates outward through the liquid mantle. As it finally encounters the dense, pressurized bottom of the gaseous atmosphere, it violently heats the lower layers, initiating a massive global process of thermal convection. Colossal, invisible plumes of superheated gas rise rapidly toward the freezing surface, displacing the cold, dense air which then sinks heavily back into the abyss. Let the muscles in your jaw and shoulders loosen completely, letting go of any residual lingering tension, just as this rising internal heat flows effortlessly upward into the freezing dark. This intense, vertical, and entirely internal thermodynamic churning is what actually powers the roaring horizontal atmospheric engine, translating ancient core heat into modern supersonic winds. It is a magnificent, self-contained planetary machine, fiercely breathing its own deep, fiery internal energy out into the absolute coldest, darkest reaches of space. To truly appreciate the grand, sprawling scale of this intricate, heat-driven weather system, one must pull back and observe the entire azure sphere in its totality. Looking closely at the uppermost, visible cloud tops from a great distance, the staggering, unified results of the deep convection and the frictionless flow become breathtakingly apparent. The entire outer face of the planet is in a state of continuous, rapid, and incredibly smooth horizontal motion, completely belying the crushing vertical forces beneath. By carefully tracking the fleeting icy cirrus formations, an observer can map the smooth, remarkably rapid journey of these endless freezing breezes as they encircle the globe. The clouds act as perfect, brilliant white tracer dyes injected directly into the rushing, invisible currents, beautifully illuminating the sheer, terrifying speed of the atmospheric flow. They race across the curved, darkening horizon with an elegance and a purpose that perfectly disguises the chaotic, roaring violence of the depths. It is a majestic, high-speed and deeply silent ballet of raw atmospheric dynamics, playing out endlessly on the largest, most spectacular stage imaginable. The perfect spherical illusion of the calm blue marble is entirely shattered by the breathtaking supersonic reality written clearly across its racing, wispy cloud tops. The smooth, uninterrupted journey of the clouds stands as a final, beautiful visual testament to the elegant, terrifying, and profoundly unstoppable power of the whispering winds. Leaving the unstoppable power of those whispering winds far above, a descent into the true bulk of the planet reveals a shocking transition from airy violence to crushing liquid density. Beneath the seemingly bottomless gaseous exterior lies an unimaginably vast, churning mantle, composed almost entirely of water, ammonia, and methane compounds. Planetary scientists historically refer to these specific chemical building blocks as planetary ices, a deeply deceptive term that profoundly misrepresents their actual, dynamic physical state within this extreme environment. Sinking into this abyss, the surrounding material behaves like an exceptionally heavy, viscous liquid that relentlessly dominates the entire internal volume of the world. It is a completely alien ocean without any discernible definitive surface, seamlessly blending with the darkening atmospheric gases above in a continuous, unbroken gradient of thickening matter. Surprisingly, the defining characteristic of this massive hidden mantle is not its freezing cold, but rather its overwhelming, oppressive, and omnipresent heat. The immense gravitational weight of the entire planetary atmosphere pressing down forcefully from above generates an environment of unimaginably intense, continuously crushing pressure. This relentless compression forcefully squeezes the molecules of water and ammonia so tightly together that they generate immense amounts of latent thermal energy. Consequently, this deeply buried, sunless ocean is completely incapable of ever freezing solid, despite the terrifyingly frigid void of space lurking just beyond the upper clouds. It exists permanently as an incredibly dense, scalding hot, and highly pressurized fluid layer that churns endlessly in the pitch-black planetary interior. The physical behavior of this thick liquid defies all terrestrial intuition, flowing sluggishly like molten glass under the unbearable weight of the sky. Immersed within this boiling, lightless sea, the concept of ice takes on a paradoxical, completely unearthly new meaning entirely divorced from cold. The The crushing forces lock the energetic, superheated molecules into a bizarre state of fluid suspension, perfectly balancing explosive heat against inescapable, heavy containment. It is a vast subterranean cauldron of swirling heavy liquids, forever boiling in the absolute dark without ever shedding a single rising bubble. Sinking ever deeper into the heart of the planet, the surrounding ambient pressure gradually builds to levels that would instantly crush solid terrestrial stone into powder. Yet, in the pure realm of imagination, this steadily increasing omnipresent force can be perceived as an incredibly comforting, heavy, and enveloping physical embrace. The fluid presses inward uniformly from absolutely every direction, creating a perfect, inescapable, and surprisingly soothing blanket of absolute hydrostatic stability. As your own breathing deepens and your physical body sinks heavily into its comfortable resting place, allow your muscles to entirely surrender to gravity's gentle pull. Mirror this deep planetary stillness, feeling a profound sense of safety perfectly echoing the secure, insulated depths of this immense, subterranean liquid world. The chaotic, screaming winds of the high atmosphere are now thousands of miles away, replaced by an absolute, heavy and silent fluid peace. Within this immense pressurized womb of the ice giant, all sudden movements and violent kinetic shocks are utterly and completely dampened into nothingness. The crushing weight of the enveloping ocean acts as the ultimate planetary shock absorber, heavily insulating the deep interior from the frantic cosmic dance above. It is a place of profound, immovable resting, where the chaotic energy of the universe is gently, firmly squeezed into total submission. Deep within this heavy, watery embrace, a spectacular and entirely invisible electromagnetic phenomenon silently unfolds across planetary scales. The intense heat and staggering pressure fundamentally alter the chemical structure of the water and ammonia, violently stripping away electrons and turning the ocean into a highly conductive soup. This massive, churning spherical layer of ionized salty fluid becomes a gargantuan, dynamic electrical dynamo spinning endlessly in the dark. As the vast, thick currents of this conductive mantle slowly circulate and slide past one another, they constantly, relentlessly generate a tremendously powerful magnetic field. This unseen, sprawling force field erupts outward from the pressurized depths, silently piercing the heavy liquid ocean and the violent atmospheric layers above. It stretches far out into the empty void of space, serving as an invisible, protective magnetic bubble shielding the planet from the harsh solar winds. Unlike a rigid bar magnet forged of solid iron, this fluid-generated field is inherently chaotic, wildly complex, and constantly shifting its invisible lines of force. The fluid nature of the dynamo ensures that the magnetic web is forever warping, a direct, silent reflection of the sluggish, twisting liquid currents buried deep below. It is a breathtaking demonstration of deep planetary alchemy, transforming crushing mechanical pressure and heat into pure, sprawling electromagnetic power. Exploring further into the deep, the ambient temperatures within the thick water ammonia ocean rapidly soar to staggering, truly apocalyptic extremes. The thermal intensity resting at these crushing depths easily rivals the blazing white-hot surface of a main sequence star. In any normal terrestrial environment, such catastrophic heat would instantly vaporize liquid water into a violent, rapidly expanding cloud of explosive steam. However, the physics governing this subterranean world operate under the ruthless, unrelenting tyranny of millions of atmospheres of crushing gravitational pressure. This unimaginable heavy containment forcefully prevents the superheated molecules from expanding, physically locking them into a dense liquid state despite the blistering stellar heat. The fluid is held hostage by gravity, entirely forbidden from boiling away, forced to writhe and flow while retaining its scalding, thick liquid form. It is an environment of supreme, agonizing physical tension, perfectly balancing the explosive outward desire of heat against the implacable, inward crushing of planetary weight. This paradoxical, superheated liquid state is a marvel of cosmic engineering, a silent battleground where heat and pressure fight to an eternal, unmoving draw. The ocean remains entirely fluid, quietly holding enough trapped thermal energy to instantly incinerate any earthly material. Picture a boundless, impossible subterranean sea stretching endlessly in all directions, completely shrouded in absolute, unbroken cosmic night. In this extreme, abyssal environment, the comfortable, familiar rules of earthly chemistry are entirely rewritten, and the traditional states of matter no longer apply. Water, ammonia, and methane cease to behave as simple liquids or gases, morphing instead into exotic hybrid phases of dense, superionic matter. The crushing weight forcefully reorganizes the very atomic structure of these compounds, stripping away hydrogen ions and allowing them to flow freely through a rigid, crystallized lattice of oxygen. This creates a surreal, heavy substance that is simultaneously a solid and a liquid, a bizarre flowing crystal that burns with intense, internal electric heat. It is a completely alien manifestation of water, existing only in the most extreme, pressurized torture chambers of the outer solar system. Navigating this exotic supersonic ocean would be like swimming through a sea of glowing, molten, electrically charged black glass. The sheer strangeness of this hidden world serves as a profound reminder of how deeply limited our terrestrial perspective truly is when evaluating the wider universe. This deep mantle is a vast hidden laboratory of extreme physics, quietly proving that the cosmos is infinitely more creative and bizarre than we can possibly fathom. Unseen currents of incredible scale slowly and deliberately circulate within this thick supersonic mantle, driven by the intense thermal gradients of the deep interior. These massive, sluggish convection cells operate on a timescale that utterly defies human comprehension, taking centuries to complete a single, agonizingly slow vertical rotation. They act as the primary, vital circulatory system of the ice giant, steadily transporting primordial, ancient heat from the deep core upward toward the freezing atmosphere. Notice the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your own chest, a comforting, steady biological pulse that mirrors this deep, slow-motion planetary breathing. Just as your circulatory system quietly maintains your body's warmth while you rest, these massive, creeping liquid updrafts distribute ancient thermal energy throughout the dark, heavy ocean. They silently ferry the fire of planetary creation up from the rocky depths, continuously feeding the roaring atmospheric engines operating thousands of miles above. As the superheated liquid gradually rises and approaches the slightly cooler, lower boundaries of the atmosphere, it naturally cools, condenses, and heavily sinks back down into the abyss. This eternal, unhurried cycle of rising heat and falling density forms a perfectly balanced, closed-loop system of immense thermodynamic efficiency. It is a quiet, majestic, and entirely invisible subterranean ballet, a slow, churning dance of thick, hot liquids moving gracefully in the eternal dark. The sheer, mind-numbing physical volume of this hidden superheated ocean is truly difficult to fully grasp or properly contextualize. This single, continuous layer of dense, flowing fluid contains a staggering amount of mass, easily equating to more than a dozen times the total bulk of our entire home planet. It is an ocean so unbelievably vast and profoundly deep that it could comfortably swallow multiple Earths without raising its hidden internal sea level by a single inch. This massive, heavy accumulation of exotic liquids constitutes the absolute vast majority of the ice giant's overall planetary mass and total physical volume. The roaring supersonic atmosphere above, despite its terrifying visual prominence and vast diameter, is ultimately just a thin, insubstantial veneer of gas clinging tenuously to this colossal water world. The true identity of the planet lies entirely within this dark, crushing and overwhelmingly massive subterranean sea. Floating in the centre of this endless pressurised fluid, the sheer scale of the surrounding mass would invoke a profound, deeply humbling sense of cosmic insignificance. It is a boundless, heavy darkness stretching out for tens of thousands of miles in every possible direction, a truly planetary-scale reservoir of alien water. The hidden ocean is the silent, immovable heavyweight champion of the outer solar system, a massive hidden behemoth lurking quietly beneath the blue clouds. Serving as the ultimate planetary buffer, this deep, incredibly dense fluid layer completely and thoroughly encapsulates the planet's hidden, solid, rocky core. It acts as an unimaginably massive, heavy, and highly effective insulating blanket, perfectly wrapping the ancient burning seed of the world in a protective, thick, liquid embrace. This exotic material prevents the raw, blistering heat of the silicate center from directly, violently impacting the delicate gaseous atmosphere high above. By heavily mediating the outward flow of extreme core temperatures, the vast, superheated ocean ensures a slow, controlled, and perfectly steady release of vital planetary energy. Without this colossal, thick liquid shock absorber, the internal thermal radiation would likely boil the atmospheric gases away entirely, stripping the planet down to a barren rock. The mantle perfectly regulates the world's internal temperature, acting as a massive deep-sea thermostat operating under millions of atmospheres of pressure. Deepest within this lightless, heavy abyss, where the gravitational pressure reaches its absolute, terrifying maximum, the fundamental rules of chemistry produce a breathtaking hidden miracle. The incredibly dense hot fluid is rich in hydrocarbons, forcefully dragged down from the upper atmosphere and subjected to unimaginable, relentless mechanical compression. The overwhelming, squeezing forces become so profoundly intense that they physically shatter the molecular bonds of the methane, completely separating the hydrogen from the raw elemental carbon. Stripped of their atomic partners, these bare carbon atoms are violently forced together, packing into the tightest, most highly organized, and mathematically perfect physical structures naturally possible. In the absolute crushing darkness of the deep planetary mantle, these invisible microscopic specks of pure carbon begin to seamlessly and flawlessly crystallize. The overwhelming pressure of the superheated ocean actively, continuously, forges genuine, flawless diamond crystals in the deep, flowing liquid void. This hidden subterranean alchemy transforms the deepest, most terrifyingly pressurized layers of the planet into a vast, swirling factory of unimaginable glittering wealth. It is a silent, breathtaking testament to the creative, transformative power of raw planetary gravity, turning simple atmospheric gases into the hardest, most precious stones known to science. Buried completely out of sight and forever out of human reach, this dark, crushing fluid ocean is secretly teeming with microscopic, newly born diamonds. Hidden within this dark, crushing fluid ocean, the secretly teeming, microscopic, newly born diamonds begin their existence not as jewels, but as broken remnants of the sky. Deep within the pressurized abyss, the extreme gravitational weight of the planet acts as a relentless mechanical forge, targeting the methane molecules that have drifted down from the upper azure haze. This unimaginable force systematically shatters the chemical bonds of the gas, mercilessly stripping away the lighter hydrogen atoms and leaving the carbon entirely isolated in the lightless deep. Surprisingly, these freed carbon atoms do not remain in a state of chaotic isolation for long. In the profound, heavy darkness of the mantle, they are forced into an intimate proximity that overrides their natural repulsion, triggering a magnificent structural transformation. They begin to bond with one another in a mathematically perfect tetrahedral lattice, crystallizing into the rigid, glittering form of genuine diamonds. This is a silent, ongoing miracle of geometry born from the most violent pressures imaginable, where the simplest elements are refined into the hardest, most resilient structures in the known universe. If we were to look closer at these newborn gems, we would see that they do not plummet through the planet like stones falling through air. Because the surrounding water ammonia mantle is an incredibly dense and viscous supersonic fluid, the tiny diamonds find themselves suspended in a heavy, sluggish medium. They begin a journey that is measured not in minutes or hours, but in agonizingly slow thousands of years. As you feel the weight of your own body sinking effortlessly into the mattress, imagine these microscopic crystals performing their own graceful, unhurried descent through the planetary deep. This gentle, glittering precipitation is entirely dictated by the unyielding, patient pull of the planet's massive internal gravity. Every single microscopic gem is oriented toward one specific destination, the heavy, solid, and scorching core resting at the absolute center of the world. They fall in a continuous globe-spanning sheet of precious debris, moving steadily away from the freezing outer space and toward the fiery heart of the ice giant. It is a one-way pilgrimage of carbon, a relentless movement of mass that has persisted for eons in the absolute lightless silence. This structure of falling crystals does more than just decorate the deep. It actively contributes to the planet's mysterious internal energy. As the countless diamonds slowly push through the thick supersonic fluid, the resulting friction generates a subtle, steady, and pervasive internal heat. This kinetic energy, transformed into thermal radiation, helps to keep the internal ocean boiling and ensures that the planet remains a dynamic, living world. It is a beautiful, efficient cycle where the very act of falling creates the warmth necessary to sustain the planet's vast hidden currents. If we consider the sheer age of this world, the scale of this crystalline accumulation becomes almost impossible to comprehend. For nearly 4.5 billion years, this silent subterranean rain has been falling without a single moment of interruption. Scientists speculate that this continuous rain of carbon may have eventually formed a thick, sparkling layer of diamond slush thousands of miles deep around the rocky core. This hidden shell of wealth is a geologic record of the planet's history, a massive, glittering monument to the sheer persistence of planetary gravity. Deep within the ice giant, the earthly concept of rain undergoes a beautifully surreal and precious transformation that completely defies our terrestrial expectations. On our homeworld, rain is a fleeting, life-giving event of liquid water that evaporates back into the air. On Neptune, the weather is composed of the most valuable material known to our culture, falling in a permanent, indestructible cascade that never returns to the sky. Notice how your breath flows in and out with a steady, peaceful rhythm, mirroring the quiet, eternal consistency of this alien storm. Picture a silent, slow-motion cascade of these microscopic jewels descending gently through the vast ocean of hot, pressurized liquid. If one could somehow hear this process, it might manifest as a soft, crystalline clinking, the sound of billions of tiny diamonds brushing against one another in the dark. It is a sensory experience of ultimate luxury and absolute isolation, a glittering blizzard occurring in a place where no light will ever reach it. This is the true heart of the planet's beauty, a magnificent hidden spectacle that requires no audience to maintain its breathtaking perfection. Knowing that such an exotic phenomenon occurs quietly in the absolute dark adds a final, profound layer of peaceful mystery to the blue planet. It reminds us that the most incredible wonders of the universe are often those that are tucked away far beneath the surface, protected by thousands of miles of crushing ocean and gas. This hidden rain is a secret kept by the ice giant, a glittering truth that remains true whether we observe it or not. As you drift further into relaxation, carry the image of this silent, sparkling descent with you, a symbol of the quiet, enduring treasures that fill the vast reaches of the dark. Rising out of the dark interior and back into the thin, sun-starved vacuum, we find that the planet's enduring treasures are not confined to its crushing depths. High above the azure clouds, a delicate and exceedingly faint ring system encircles the giant in a series of spectral, nearly invisible loops that stand in stark contrast to the absolute blackness of the outer solar system. These bands are composed of fine cosmic dust and microscopic ice particles that drift in a state of ultimate suspension, representing a quiet, fragile geometry that mirrors the planet's own understated majesty in the most remote reaches of space. This structure is a masterwork of orbital subtlety, stretching across the void with a thinness that defies its massive planetary diameter and provides a ghostly silhouette against the distant flickering stars. Each particle within the rings is a solitary traveller, yet together they form a cohesive circular architecture that defines the space around the world and whispers of ancient collisions and forgotten comets. It is a ghostly crown, a final testament to the fact that even a world as powerful as this one can possess a touch that is incredibly light and transient, hanging like a faint breath in the eternal dark. These rings are so profoundly dark and translucent that they manage to remain entirely hidden from human observation until the very end of the 20th century. For centuries, astronomers gazed at the blue marble and saw only a lonely, companionless world, unaware of the thin veils of matter orbiting just out of reach in the frozen silence of the outer reaches. It took the close-up electronic eyes of a visiting spacecraft to finally unveil these shy, charcoal-coloured structures against the backdrop of the stars, reminding us that the universe holds its most subtle features for those who venture into the deepest silence. The rings reflect so little light that they blend almost perfectly with the surrounding vacuum, making them nearly impossible to detect from the inner solar system without the use of specialised long-range imaging equipment. They are composed of material darkened by the relentless bombardment of cosmic rays, turning what might have been bright reflective ice into a complex organic substance as black as soot. This extreme translucency creates a veil that is more like a shifting shadow than a solid object, a quiet reality that does not shout for our attention, but waits patiently for the light to catch its edge. Unlike the brilliant, blindingly reflective bands of Saturn that command attention with their icy glare, these rings are quiet, understated streaks of ancient debris. They possess a deep, sombre hue, coloured by complex organic compounds that have been scorched by radiation into a dull, reddish-brown tint that perfectly complements the planet's sapphire depths. This understated palette perfectly matches the dusky twilight environment of the outer solar system, where the sun is little more than a distant flickering memory and the cold light offers no warmth to the drifting dust. Surprisingly, the universe produces a diverse array of ring systems, and this one represents the elegant dark end of that spectrum with particles that absorb more light than they reflect back into the void. This muted coloration gives the rings a sense of ancient weathered stability, as if they have been drifting in the absolute cold for billions of years while slowly accumulating the dust of the wandering cosmos. They are a sombre, beautiful frame for the vibrant blue world, providing a visual anchor that feels both ancient and profoundly calm in its dark, reddish simplicity against the starry background. The outermost structure, often described as the Adam's Ring, presents a fascinating mystery that defies the traditional logic of planetary orbital mechanics and gravitational stability. Within this thin band, the material is concentrated into several strange, clumpy arcs of matter that refuse to spread out into a smooth, continuous line, despite the passage of eons of constant rotation. It is as if some invisible hand is constantly gathering the particles, holding them in a series of permanent, localized clouds that drift together through the void like celestial phantoms. This structure challenges our understanding of how rings evolve, as gravity should naturally pull these clumps apart and distribute them evenly around the planet over the course of its long life. Yet, these arcs persist in a display of unexpected celestial stubbornness, appearing like bright, crowded segments of a broken circle trailing one another in a silent, high-speed parade around the azure giant. This unexplained phenomenon serves as a quiet reminder that the distant reaches of our system still harbour secrets that our most advanced mathematics have yet to fully explain or categorize. If we were to look closer at the edges of these dark bands, we would find small, dedicated shepherd moons gliding gracefully among the scattered dust with a quiet, tireless precision. These tiny, rocky worlds exert a gentle but persistent gravitational pull, acting as cosmic guardians that nudge the drifting debris back into line whenever it threatens to wander away from the collective. Notice how your own physical frame rests in a state of perfect, effortless alignment, much like these moons maintaining their steady, ancient orbits through the immense dark void. The relationship between the shepherd moons and the ring particles is a delicate, invisible choreography of gravity and motion that prevents the rings from dispersing into the void of space. These moons are often only a few miles wide, yet they carve out narrow paths through the dust to keep the system in its precise, circular form through a constant, silent application of force. This silent partnership is a fundamental part of the planet's architecture, demonstrating how even the smallest bodies can hold the most vast structures in place through a quiet, unwavering commitment to the laws of balance. Floating in the pure, absolute void, trillions of microscopic grains of ice perform a silent, shimmering dance as they reflect the distant, dim sunlight that reaches this far corner of the system. Each particle is a tiny mirror, no larger than a speck of smoke, yet together they create a ghostly glimmer that outlines the planet's silhouette against the black expanse of space. The light they catch is weak and silvered, a secret radiance shared only with the surrounding darkness, revealing the hidden architecture of the rings to those who look closely. If we could witness this from the surface of one of the moons, the rings would appear as a faint glowing arch stretching across the black sky like a bridge of starlight. The microscopic nature of the grains means that they reflect light in a soft and diffuse way, creating an ethereal glow rather than the sharp, icy reflection seen on more prominent worlds. It is a quiet, visual whisper of the sun's distant presence, reminding us that even at the edge of the solar system, light still finds the hidden structures of the dark with a gentle, illuminating touch. Surprisingly, the innermost structure, known as the Gal Ring, exists so close to the planet that it seems to whisper delicately against the very top of the atmosphere in a permanent ghostly embrace. This broad, diffuse sheet of dust hangs in the transition zone where the planet's gravity is at its most demanding, appearing as a diaphanous veil through which the stars can be seen with startling clarity. The proximity of this ring creates a sense of profound intimacy between the vast azure world and the debris that perpetually orbits its crown, blending the vacuum of space with the gaseous deep. This structure is much wider and more scattered than the outer rings, appearing as a hazy glow that slowly blends into the upper reaches of the blue gas giant. The particles here are constantly being tugged by the planet's magnetic field and atmospheric drag, yet they maintain a fragile equilibrium within their orbital path through the thin upper haze. This diffuse band serves as a soft, dusty bridge between the solid vacuum of space and the deep pressurized reality of the blue atmosphere below, marking the final boundary of the planet's external domain. This synchronized movement is the result of countless tiny adjustments made over the history of the planet, where any discordant particle was long ago cast out or pulled into the depths. The rings move as a single fluid unit, a spinning record of time and gravity that preserves the memory of its own creation while maintaining a state of absolute, unchanging order. In this dark, quiet corner of the system, the rings perform their endless circles with a grace that is as ancient as it is unchanging, a silent testament to the enduring laws of the universe. Deep within the scientific community, some believe that these delicate rings are far from permanent, existing instead as fleeting structures that are constantly fading and reforming over immense timescales. They may be the remnants of shattered moons or the debris of passing comets, captured briefly by the planet's gravity before they eventually spiral inward toward the methane clouds or disperse into the void. This realization adds a layer of poignant beauty to the rings, characterizing them as a transient jewelry that adorns the long, epic life of the ice giant for only a brief cosmic moment. If we could watch the planet over billions of years, we might see the ring system brighten, dim, and shift its shape as new material arrives and old material is lost to the abyss. This inherent fragility makes their current presence all the more remarkable, as we are witnessing a brief snapshot of elegance in a universe that is constantly in a state of motion and change. They represent the ephemeral nature of beauty in the cosmos, a structure that exists for a few million years before returning to the darkness from which it was originally born. If we were to step back and view the entire system, we would see how these faint dark bands frame the majestic blue planet like a minimalist and elegant work of art created by gravity. The simplicity of the rings, with their thin lines and muted colours, provides a perfect visual counterpoint to the deep, vibrant blue of the atmosphere that churns with hidden energy below. They do not compete with the planet's beauty, but rather enhance its regal, isolated presence in the outer solar system, acting as a quiet border for a world that thrives in the cold. Notice how this minimalist framing creates a sense of profound isolation, emphasizing the planet's status as a solitary giant in a vast empty sea of stars and shadow. The rings serve as a delicate boundary, a thin line that separates the world of blue gas from the infinite black of the void, in a state of permanent silent tension. As you sink deeper into a state of total, unburdened relaxation, let the image of this framed blue world be the anchor for your quiet thoughts of perfect dark balance, resting forever in the tranquility of the deep. Beneath the serene rings and the shifting azure clouds, the journey terminates in a place of absolute dark balance. At the very heart of this vast ice giant lies a solid core that is strikingly familiar in its dimensions, roughly the size of our own planet Earth. This hidden world within a world provides the essential gravitational anchor for the entire massive structure, holding the colossal bulk of the gas giant together through the sheer force of its presence. While the outer layers of the planet are fluid, shifting and transient, this terrestrial-sized heart remains a permanent and formidable presence at the bottom of the deep. It is a profound realization that a sphere so similar to our home resides at the center of such an alien giant, acting as a secret rocky twin buried beneath thousands of miles of blue shadow. This core is the silent center of gravity, a compact and heavy foundation that dictates the path of every molecule in the surrounding atmosphere. It rests in a state of ultimate isolation, a solid sanctuary that has not seen the light of a star for billions of years. This hidden Earth is the immovable center of a blue empire, a dense and heavy reminder of our own origins tucked away in the farthest reaches of the dark. Within this lightless abyss, the core stands as the final destination, a solid truth buried beneath a kingdom of whispers. It is the immovable foundation upon which the entire blue colossus is built, a silent witness to the turbulent and violent history of the outer solar system's formation. Imagine the density of this sphere, where every grain of silicate and every atom of metal is packed together with such efficiency that it creates a gravitational well of immense power. This core does not drift or wobble, it sits at the absolute center of mass, providing a steady coordinate in the vast empty dark. It is the solid ground of a world that otherwise has no surface, a singular point of terrestrial reality within a kingdom of gas and ice. Every rotation of the planet is anchored by this heavy heart, ensuring the sphere maintains its integrity through the vacuum. The iron and nickel provide a metallic strength that resists the shifting tides of the mantle, serving as a permanent geological sentinel. Surprisingly, despite the frozen reputation of the outer solar system, the temperature resting at this profound center is blistering hot. The thermal intensity within this rocky heart reaches staggering levels, easily rivaling the visible surface of the sun itself in its raw, white-hot ferocity. This is not the heat of solar radiation or the warmth of a nearby star, but the concentrated energy of planetary formation and the crushing weight of gravity. It is a world of intense, localized energy shrouded in absolute darkness, a paradox of fire buried deep within a ball of ice and gas. As the internal furnace burns, it creates a high-energy environment that would be instantly fatal to any known form of matter, yet it remains hidden away from the cold vacuum. This heat is the pulse of the planet, a vibrant and ancient energy that refuses to be extinguished by the surrounding cold. It glows with a light that no eye will ever see, a secret fire at the heart of the blue darkness. The intensity of this heat is a reminder that the universe hides its most energetic secrets in the places where the pressure is the highest. It is a star-like intensity trapped in a cage of rock and ice, forever burning at the center of the night with a temperature that defies its distant frozen location. As you lie there, feel the subtle warmth of your own breath, a gentle reminder of the life-giving energy that exists within every quiet form. Deep within this inferno, a second paradox of physics takes hold to define the core's physical state in ways that challenge our earthly intuition. Despite the incredible star-like heat that would vaporize any known material on our home world, the unimaginable surrounding pressure locks the core minerals into a dense, solid state. The weight of the entire planet presses inward with such ferocity that the atoms are physically forbidden from vibrating into a liquid or gas. It is a solid sphere born from the ultimate tension, a place where the rules of temperature and pressure engage in a silent, permanent standoff that results in absolute rigidity. The silicate rocks and metal alloys are compressed until they reach a density that defies comparison, becoming harder and more unyielding than any substance we can manufacture. This pressure is the ultimate architect, shaping a solid world out of pure energy and ensuring that the heart of the planet remains as firm as a diamond. This rocky heart acts as a massive thermal reservoir, slowly and persistently releasing primordial heat left over from the very birth of the solar system. This is ancient energy, captured over 4 billion years ago when the initial clouds of gas and dust first collapsed to form the planetary seed. It has been held in this deep, insulated vault for eons, leaking out into the surrounding mantle at a steady and measured pace that has not wavered since the beginning of time. This heat is the breath of the planet, a steady exhale of energy that keeps the world from becoming a dead, frozen husk. It is a testament to the long memory of matter, holding onto its fire long after the rest of the universe has cooled. Every joule of energy escaping the core is a whisper from the deep past, an echo of a time when the planets were still forming from the dust. If we were to look closer at the connection between the core and the sky, we would discover that this internal warmth is the true engine of the planet's weather. Radiating outward through the lightless mantle, this gentle but persistent thermal energy powers the fierce winds and monumental storms that define the upper atmosphere. The core provides the vertical kinetic energy that drives the horizontal supersonic gales, creating a bridge between the solid heart and the gaseous exterior. This upward flow of heat initiates massive convection currents that rise through the deep ocean, eventually reaching the cloud tops to manifest as the fastest winds in the solar system. Without this constant supply of internal fire, the atmosphere would settle into a stagnant, frozen quietness, losing the vibrant and chaotic energy that makes the planet a living masterpiece. It is a beautiful irony that the most violent activity on the planet's surface is born from the quiet, unmoving warmth of its deepest center. The sky above is merely a reflection of the energy escaping from the solid world below, a high-altitude dance choreographed by the rocky heart. The entire planetary climate is a gift from the core, a continuous transfer of ancient power that transforms a cold ball of gas into a world of motion. This internal drive ensures the blue giant remains a dynamic and spirited presence in the otherwise silent outer reaches. Your body remains perfectly still and supported, mirroring the core's own role as a steady provider of energy within a vast, silent space. The core quietly and stoically endures the crushing weight of an entire ice giant pressing down upon it from all sides. Every ounce of the planet's massive bulk is pulled by gravity toward this single point, creating a localized pressure that is difficult for any human mind to properly scale. Thousands of miles of superheated ocean and thick pressurized gas push inward with a relentless force that would flatten any terrestrial structure into a microscopic speck. Yet, the core sustains this burden without shifting, fracturing, or losing its shape, held in a state of perfect heavy equilibrium. It is the ultimate example of strength in silence, carrying the weight of a world while remaining entirely unchanged by the pressure that defines it. This endurance is the core's primary function, serving as a pillar that supports the immense structure of the planet against the absolute vacuum of the surrounding space. It is a place of absolute density, where every cubic inch of material is a masterpiece of gravitational packing. The weight of the world is not a burden to this heart, but the very force that gives it its solid reality and its unshakable purpose. In this crushing embrace, the core finds its definitive form, a solid and unyielding center that defines the limits of what matter can withstand. Far from the reach of the external universe, it remains completely insulated from the freezing temperatures of space by thousands of miles of deep ocean and thick gas. The outer void of the solar system is a realm of absolute cold, a place where the sun's light is too weak to provide any comfort or warmth. Yet the core sits in a protected sanctuary that preserves its ancient fiery temperature with perfect, unmoving efficiency. This layered insulation acts as a massive planetary-scale thermos, ensuring that the internal fires of creation are never extinguished by the endless cosmic night. The heat of the core is wrapped in a thick blanket of water, ammonia, and hydrogen, a multi-layered shield that keeps the interior as hot as a star. It is a hidden, warm sanctuary at the bottom of a cold blue world, a place where the harshness of space can never penetrate or even be felt. This isolation is absolute, creating a world that is fundamentally disconnected from the environment of the outer solar system. Inside this vault, the fire burns as brightly today as it did when the planet was first born, guarded by a fortress of ice and gas. It is a cozy terrestrial hearth buried deep within a celestial giant, protected from the cold by the very mass that it holds together. It is the architect of its own massive environment, a small, solid origin point for a world that has expanded into a giant of the outer dark. Without this rocky beginning, the gas and ice would have remained scattered and thin, never coalescing into the vibrant blue sphere we see today. The core is the mother of the planet, the original mass that dictated the size, shape, and destiny of everything that followed. It sits at the center of its own creation, a humble rocky world that successfully gathered a kingdom around itself across the eons. Every facet of the planet's identity is an expansion of this original rocky truth, a monument built upon a single, solid foundation. The giant we see from our telescopes is merely the elaborate cloak worn by this small, ancient rocky seed. Notice the stillness in your limbs, as if you too have found a stable, unchanging center within the quiet of the night. Deep within the turbulent, swirling planet, the dense core exists in a state of supreme, unchanging stillness that stands in stark contrast to the world above. While the mantle churns with superheated currents and the atmosphere races with supersonic winds, the heart of the world knows no motion or change. It is a place of ultimate rest, a solid and silent point of reference for a planet that never stops moving in its long journey around the sun. This stillness is not a lack of energy, but a perfection of balance where all forces cancel each other out to create a state of absolute peace. It is the final reward for the journey inward, a realization that at the center of all chaos lies a core of perfect, unmoving tranquility. The core is the anchor of the soul of the planet, a place where time seems to stand still while the rest of the universe rushes past. It is the silent, solid truth at the centre of the blue dream, a place of immovable weight and eternal rest. In this profound stillness, the story of the planet finds its deepest meaning, a solid foundation that endures forever in the heart of the storm. As the planet drifts through the cosmic dark, its heart remains a sanctuary of unchanging peace, a solid and silent witness to the infinite silence of the stars. Beyond the profound stillness of the rocky foundation and the infinite silence of the stars, an invisible and wildly erratic architecture begins to manifest within the cold vacuum of space. While most planetary bodies align their magnetic hearts with their physical rotation, this blue giant possesses a magnetic field that is dramatically and beautifully askew. It is offset from the planet's rotational axis by a staggering angle, creating a lopsided invisible shield that tilts nearly halfway toward the equator. This geometric eccentricity means that as the world spins, the magnetic poles perform a massive sweeping dance across the sky, rather than staying anchored at the top and bottom of the globe. It is a spectacular departure from the orderly alignments we expect in the heavens, suggesting a deeper internal complexity that defies simple symmetry. This wandering field is the first hint that the planet's unseen forces operate with a logic entirely their own, governed by the fluid chaos hidden beneath the clouds. The sheer scale of this misalignment creates a magnetosphere that is constantly being reshaped and distorted as it interacts with the surrounding cosmic environment. It is an architecture of energy that refuses to conform to the standard planetary blueprint, opting instead for a path of beautiful, tilted irregularity. This wandering magnetic influence is the silent herald of a world that thrives on the unexpected, a place where even the most fundamental forces of nature are allowed to drift and sway in the dark. Surprisingly, the origins of this sprawling electromagnetic web do not lie within the solid, heavy metals of the central core as one might logically expect. Instead, the electrical dynamo is generated much closer to the surface, emerging from the churning conductive fluids of the middle mantle. This region, composed of superheated water and ammonia under extreme pressure, acts as a gargantuan liquid electrical generator. Because the mantle is a vast shifting ocean rather than a rigid solid, the magnetic field it produces inherits a fluid, unstable character. The electrons stripped from the molecules in this pressurized deep flow in massive swirling currents that create the magnetism we observe from the outside. This off-center origin is the primary reason the field appears so distorted and displaced, a direct result of being born from a liquid layer that is constantly in motion. This supersonic water, existing in a state that is both solid and liquid, serves as the perfect conductor for the planet's vast internal currents. It is a shimmering testament to the power of the hidden ocean, proving that the planet's protective shield is as dynamic and alive as the storms themselves. This fluid-driven magnetism ensures that the field is never truly static, mirroring the ever-changing nature of the superheated currents thousands of miles below. This structure of off-center energy causes the entire magnetic envelope to undergo a graceful, rhythmic wobble as the great planet completes its daily rotation. Imagine a massive, invisible top spinning slightly off balance, its magnetic lines of force sweeping through the void in a complex undulating pattern. This celestial swaying is a silent, ongoing motion that defines the interaction between the planet and the surrounding space. As the world turns every 16 hours, the magnetic poles trace wide, elliptical paths across the sky, constantly shifting the orientation of the planet's invisible defences. This motion is not chaotic, but follows a repetitive, hypnotic cadence that can be mapped and predicted through the study of the planet's radio emissions. It creates a dynamic environment where the magnetic field is never truly static, but is always in a state of sweeping, elegant transition. This wobble is the pulse of the magnetosphere, a rhythmic swaying that harmonizes with the slow, patient movement of the planet through the dark. It is a movement that speaks of a world that is not a static object, but a living, breathing participant in the cosmic dance. Every rotation brings a new alignment, a new perspective on the invisible web that guards the azure giant from the infinite silence. Notice how your own physical presence is shielded and secure within your current resting place, much like the planet's own delicate interior is guarded by this complex lopsided shield. This invisible barrier serves as a vital sanctuary, gently deflecting the harsh, high-energy particles of the solar wind away from the fragile, icy atmosphere. Even at this immense distance from the Sun, the solar stream carries enough energy to strip away a world's protective gases if left unopposed. The magnetic field acts as a soft, resilient cushion, catching the incoming solar radiation and guiding it safely around the planet's vast circumference. It ensures that the tranquil blue clouds and the whispering winds remain undisturbed by the violent outbursts of the distant star. This protective bubble is a silent guardian, working tirelessly in the dark to maintain the integrity of the world it surrounds. It is a beautiful, invisible architecture of safety, a magnetic embrace that preserves the life of the planet against the cold, ionizing reality of the open cosmos. This shield is the first line of defense in a universe that is often harsh and energetic, providing a quiet space for the blue giant to exist. It is a reminder that even in the most remote corners of the system, the laws of physics provide a sanctuary for those who dwell within. At the specific points where the wandering magnetic poles meet the sky, faint and ethereal auroras occasionally flicker within the high-altitude atmospheric haze. These ghostly lights do not congregate at the north and south geographic poles, but instead manifest in unexpected, shifting locations across the planet's face. They are the visible signature of solar particles being funneled down the magnetic lines of force and colliding with the methane-rich gas. These auroras appear as delicate, glowing curtains of soft light, shimmering briefly before fading back into the perpetual twilight of the upper atmosphere. They move with the magnetic field's wobble, drifting across different latitudes in a slow, luminous migration that follows the planet's internal rhythm. Observing these lights would be a lesson in celestial subtlety, as they are far dimmer and more elusive than the vibrant displays found on worlds closer to the Sun. They are the quiet, radiant whispers of the magnetosphere, a visual bridge between the invisible energy of the deep and the dark silence of space. These lights are not a constant presence, but a rare and beautiful gift that appears when the conditions of the void are just right. They serve as a luminous reminder that the invisible forces of the world are always interacting with the energy of the stars. Picture a massive magnetic tail stretching far out behind the world like a colossal invisible windsock, deep within the wake of the planet's long journey through the void. This trailing structure is formed by the pressure of the solar wind, which sculpts the magnetic field into a long tapering streamer that reaches millions of miles into the dark. It is a fluid, responsive entity, flapping softly and rhythmically as it reacts to the varying intensity of the solar stream. This magnetic tail serves as a vast reservoir of stored energy, occasionally snapping back and releasing particles into the atmosphere in a process known as magnetic reconnection. It is a magnificent trailing silhouette that follows the planet through its century-long orbit, a constant companion that marks its path through the stars. The tail moves with the same wobbling grace as the rest of the field, creating a complex, twisting geometry in the space behind the planet. It is a silent, sprawling monument to the planet's interaction with the solar system, a long and elegant shadow of energy cast across the eternal night. This structure is a reminder that the planet's influence extends far beyond its visible blue clouds, reaching deep into the empty space that surrounds it. It is a trailing ribbon of energy, a silent and persistent wake left by a giant world as it drifts through the infinite black. Every 16 hours, the entire sprawling magnetic structure completes a sweeping, uneven, and silent rotation in perfect synchronization with the planet's internal spin. This cycle defines the magnetic day, a period of time during which the invisible lines of force perform a full three-dimensional circuit of the surrounding space. Because the field is so heavily tilted and offset, this rotation is a complex wobbling event that constantly reorganizes the shape of the magnetosphere. As the rotation progresses, the different regions of the magnetic field are exposed to the solar wind at varying angles, creating a dynamic environment of shifting pressures and tensions. This rhythmic cycle is the heartbeat of the planet's external defenses, a steady and predictable pulse that has continued for billions of years. It is a mesmerizing, slow-motion revolution of energy, a silent mechanical process that ensures the planet remains safely cocooned within its own magnetic influence. If we were to look closer at the individual lines of force, we would discover a tangled and highly dynamic web that bears little resemblance to the neat, symmetrical dipoles of more terrestrial worlds. While other magnetic fields resemble simple bar magnets with clearly defined north and south points, this field is a knot of complex interacting currents. It contains multiple poles and intricate loops of energy that warp and twist around one another in the dark. This complexity is a direct reflection of the turbulent fluid motions within the conductive mantle where the magnetism is born. The field is not a single, unified structure, but a collection of competing magnetic influences that create a messy, beautiful tapestry of force. This lack of symmetry means that the protective shield has varying strengths and weaknesses depending on where one stands relative to the center. It is a sophisticated and unpredictable architecture of energy, a testament to the fact that in the outer solar system, the laws of nature prefer complexity over simple order. This tangled web is a masterpiece of invisible engineering, a structure that is as complex and nuanced as the fluid deep from which it emerges. It is a reminder that the universe is not always orderly and predictable, but is often a place of beautiful, intricate chaos. The erratic and unpredictable nature of this magnetism serves as a silent, powerful testament to the strange fluid dynamics hidden deep inside the mantle. Every twist and turn of the magnetic lines is a direct external record of the slow-motion churning of the superheated superionic water below. Scientists use the fluctuations in the field to map the invisible currents of the interior, treating the magnetosphere as a window into a realm that can never be directly seen. It is a profound realization that the massive globe-spanning magnetic web is merely a shadow cast by the movements of a hidden ocean. The erratic behavior of the field tells a story of deep-seated convection and electrical currents that have been flowing since the planet's inception. This connection between the invisible sky and the liquid deep is a fundamental part of the planet's unified identity, proving that no part of the world exists in isolation. As you breathe in the quiet air of your own surroundings, consider how the most distant and invisible forces are often the most deeply connected to the heart of things. Feel the steady support of the ground beneath you, much as the magnetic field is anchored by the deep, liquid realities of the world it guards. This hidden connection is the secret strength of the planet, a silent and unbreakable bond between the visible and the invisible. Surrounding the entirety of the icy world, this protective magnetic bubble creates a quiet and remarkably safe haven from the harsh, high-energy cosmic rays that permeate the galaxy. These rays, originating from distant supernovae and black holes, are continuously deflected by the resilient magnetic shield before they can reach the lower atmosphere. It is a final, encompassing layer of insulation that ensures the planet remains a stable and protected environment in a chaotic universe. This safe haven is a silent gift of physics, a natural consequence of the planet's internal heat and fluid motion, providing a sanctuary for everything within. It creates a region of relative calm where the delicate chemistry of the methane clouds can persist without being disrupted by outside radiation. The magnetic bubble is the ultimate boundary of the planet's influence, a soft and shimmering frontier that separates the blue world from the infinite, energetic expanse of the stars. It is the final layer of peace, a magnetic sanctuary that allows the ice giant to drift through the dark in a state of eternal, protected tranquility. Within this bubble, the world is safe to be its own unique azure self, undisturbed by the violent energy of the wider cosmos. It is a sanctuary of energy, a place where the silence of the stars is met with the quiet, protective humming of a planetary field. Beyond the humming reach of that magnetic sanctuary, the silence of the stars is shared by a diverse family of 14 known satellites that drift in perpetual orbit. These celestial companions remain tethered to the blue giant by invisible threads of gravity, carving unique paths through the freezing cold depths of space. They range from massive icy spheres to tiny irregular shards, each contributing its own quiet movement to the planet's vast and lonely domain. This family exists in a state of absolute undisturbed peace, far removed from the energetic chaos of the inner solar system. The sheer distance from the sun ensures that their surroundings are perpetually dark, illuminated only by the soft, distant glow of the stars and the pale azure reflection of Neptune itself. They are the silent sentinels of the outer reaches, moving with a grace that has remained unchanged for billions of years in the absolute cold. Most of these satellites are not the smooth, round worlds one might find closer to the solar hearth, but are instead small, irregular chunks of ancient ice and rock. They resemble jagged cosmic sculptures, frozen in time and quietly watching the sapphire planet rotate from their lonely distant vantage points. Their surfaces are a complex tapestry of ridges and depressions, telling a silent story of a violent past that has long since settled into a serene, unhurried present. Surprisingly, the lack of a traditional spherical shape gives these moons a rugged architectural beauty that is entirely unique to the outer dark. They tumble slowly through the void, their uneven silhouettes casting long shifting shadows against the backdrop of the Milky Way. Each rotation is a slow-motion display of ancient geometry, a quiet and persistent reminder of the raw materials that originally built the foundations of our planetary neighbourhood. Among this silent assembly, the moon Nereid follows a path defined by a truly remarkable and lonely eccentricity. It swings far out into the empty, sunless void, reaching nearly 6 million miles away from its parent world, before inevitably returning for a brief close encounter. This solitary, long-distance journey takes nearly an entire Earth year to complete, representing a wanderer that refuses to stay comfortably close to the blue giant's embrace. Deep within the void, Nereid experiences the ultimate isolation, drifting in a region where the planet appears as little more than a brilliant, unblinking azure star. The vast loops it traces through the dark are a testament to the immense scale of Neptune's gravitational reach, which keeps the moon anchored even at such staggering distances. It is a rhythmic, wide-scale migration through the silence, a slow and patient pulse that defines the outer boundary of the satellite system. If we were to look closer at Proteus, the second largest member of this family, we would see a world that exists as a marvel of geometric hesitation. It is a heavily cratered, lumpy sphere that has somehow managed to stay just below the mass, required to pull itself into a perfect uniform circle. Its scarred face is a permanent map of ancient impacts, resting now in a state of eternal, silent repose within the dark reaches of the system. Feel the weight of your own head resting heavily and comfortably against your pillow, mimicking the unmoving ancient stillness of this lumpy, rocky world. Proteus remains a stoic witness to the passage of eons, its cold surface never warming, and its jagged edges never softening over the course of its long life. It is a world of shadows and ice, a solid and unyielding presence that anchors the inner family of moons with its heavy, silent mass. Deep within the inner reaches of the system, several smaller moons orbit so dangerously close to the rings that they are slowly and inevitably spiraling toward their final transformation. Over millions of years, the planet's relentless gravity pulls them closer, centimetre by centimetre, as they drift toward the invisible boundary where they will eventually be torn apart. This slow-motion doom is not a violent event, but a quiet, rhythmic decay that will one day contribute to the planet's crown. This structure of impending destruction is a natural and orderly part of the system's evolution, ensuring that the rings are constantly replenished with fresh material. The moons glide through this terminal region with a calm that defies their eventual fate, performing their final orbits with the same grace as their more distant siblings. It is a poignant, beautiful reality of the outer dark, where the end of a world is simply the beginning of a new, shimmering ring. These tiny, drifting worlds are coated in undisturbed layers of dark organic compounds mixed with pristine, ancient water ice. Their surfaces possess a subtle, charcoal-like luster that absorbs the faint starlight, reflecting only the softest silvery glint from their deeply scarred and weathered faces. This material is the result of billions of years of cosmic radiation, creating a protective, dusky skin that keeps the frozen secrets of the interior safe from the vacuum. Surprisingly, the contrast between the dark crust and the underlying ice creates a visual texture that is both somber and deeply elegant. Small impacts occasionally pierce this dark veil, revealing the bright, crystalline heart of the moon in a series of shimmering, starlit specks. It is a quiet, visual rhythm of light and shadow, a signature of the outer system where even the smallest bodies are dressed in the colours of the eternal night. Each small moon acts as a quiet, perfectly frozen record of the solar system's most violent and chaotic early history. While larger, warmer planets have erased their past through weather and geological churning, these icy shards have remained essentially unchanged for 4 billion years. They hold the chemical secrets of the primordial nebula within their cold, unmoving hearts, serving as silent archives of the time when the sun was newly born. Allow your breathing to remain as steady and undisturbed as the ancient surfaces of these silent celestial archives. Within the deep cold, the atoms of these moons are locked in a state of permanent preservation, holding on to the ancient past with a grip that never falters. They are the elders of the system, carrying the memory of the cosmos within their scarred, icy frames as they drift through the modern silence. The subtle gravity of these small celestial companions does much more than just hold them in their individual paths. It actively sculpts and maintains the sharp edges of the dusty ring system. These moons act as invisible artisans, nudging stray particles back into the collective flow and preventing the delicate bands from dissolving into the void. It is a constant, quiet labour, performed through the simple, unwavering power of mass and motion, ensuring the rings remain as thin and precise as a blade. If we were to observe the rings from the surface of a shepherd moon, we would see a wall of dust and ice held in check by the moon's own presence. The interaction is a silent gravitational dialogue that creates order out of the chaos of drifting debris, a masterpiece of orbital engineering that requires no conscious effort. It is a beautiful demonstration of balance, where the smallest moon can dictate the structure of a feature that spans the width of the entire planet. From the rocky surface of one of these moons, Neptune would loom in the sky as a massive, serene blue crescent of unimaginable scale. The giant would fill a vast portion of the local horizon, its azure glow casting a soft, cool light over the cratered landscape and the long, dark shadows of the icy mountains. It is a view of absolute peace, where the blue marble appears as a floating, luminous sanctuary in an infinite ocean of unblinking stars. This blue radiance would be the only source of light in the long, cold nights of the satellite, bathing the rocks in a hue that is both alien and deeply comforting. The subtle patterns of the planet's clouds would be visible as they race across the crescent, a silent reminder of the power and motion contained within the nearby giant. Standing on such a world, one would feel the overwhelming presence of the planet, a massive and beautiful neighbour that dominates the dark. Together, the 14 moons form a miniature clockwork solar system, performing a slow and perfectly balanced eternal waltz around the ice giant. Their orbits are a masterpiece of synchronization, a rhythmic display of gravity that ensures each member keeps its designated place in the dark. As you drift further into the stillness of your own night, imagine this harmonious dance continuing forever, a silent and beautiful movement in the deepest reaches of the cold. Every moon, from the lumpy Proteus to the wandering Nereid, contributes its own unique beat to this planetary rhythm, creating a system that is as stable as it is complex. The waltz never ends and never tires, fueled by the ancient momentum of the universe and the steady pull of the blue world at its centre. It is a final, perfect expression of order, a clockwork of ice and stone that ticks away the eons in the perfect, tranquil silence of the stars. Within that perfect, tranquil silence of the stars, a massive outlier defies the synchronized rhythm of the surrounding family. While every other large moon in our solar system follows the direction of its parent planet's spin, the gargantuan moon Triton chooses a path of absolute defiance. It revolves around the blue giant in the exact opposite direction of the planet's own rotation, a retrograde journey that creates a silent, perpetual tension in the local gravity. This backward motion is a profound anomaly, a singular instance of cosmic nonconformity that sets this world apart from any other major satellite. It glides through the dark against the grain of the system, a lonely traveller moving against a rushing tide of orbital momentum. The sheer scale of this defiance is breathtaking, as if a single dancer in a vast ballroom had decided to spin in the opposite direction of everyone else, while maintaining a flawless, unhurried grace. If we were to look closer at the mechanics of this orbit, we would see a world that is fundamentally at odds with its surroundings. The invisible tidal interactions between the moon and the planet are uniquely complex, slowly draining energy from the moon's flight. This solitary orbit serves as a constant reminder that the universe does not always follow a singular path, but often embraces the beauty of the unexpected and the contrary. This backward journey is more than just a geometric quirk. It is the lingering evidence of a violent and ancient cosmic kidnapping. The peculiar nature of its orbit heavily suggests that Triton was not born from the same disk of dust and gas that originally formed the blue giant. Instead, it was likely a wandering dwarf planet, a stray traveller from the frozen Kuiper belt that wandered too close to the gravitational reach of the ice giant long ago. Surprisingly, the universe occasionally allows for such dramatic captures, where a lonely world is pulled from the infinite dark into a permanent secondary home. Triton was likely an independent celestial body, a cousin to Pluto, until it was ensnared by the invisible nets of the planet's massive gravity. The transition from a free-roaming wanderer to a captured satellite would have been a chaotic era of shifting tides and intense internal heating. Now it rests as a captured giant, a trophy of the planet's overwhelming pull and a permanent resident of the outer system. This origin story explains why it feels so different from its siblings, possessing a chemistry and a spirit that belong to the deeper, colder reaches of space. It is a guest in this house, a magnificent survivor of a journey that spanned billions of miles before finally finding rest in this sapphire domain. The surface of Triton is a realm of extreme, bone-chilling cold, yet beneath this frozen exterior, the moon remains surprisingly and persistently active. While many moons in the outer system are dead, geologically static husks, this world is constantly and slowly repaving its own icy skin. This internal energy allows the moon to erase the scars of ancient meteor impacts, leaving it with one of the youngest and smoothest surfaces in the solar system. Deep within the moon's core, residual heat from its initial capture and the ongoing pull of the planet's gravity keeps the internal ices in a state of slow, churning motion. This thermal drive forces fresh materials to the surface, where they flow like liquid and then freeze instantly in the absolute vacuum. It is a process of perpetual renewal, a world that is forever shedding its old self to present a clean, unblemished face to the stars. As you find your own state of total, unburdened relaxation, consider the quiet persistence of this world's internal drive. It is a place where the passage of time does not mean decay, but rather a slow and steady process of restoration. The moon exists in a state of beautiful, active equilibrium, a shimmering jewel that keeps itself polished in the deep, freezing silence of the outer reaches. If we were to look closer at the equatorial regions of this captured world, we would encounter some of the most bizarre and unique geology found anywhere in the known universe. Vast, sprawling plains of smooth, dimpled terrain stretch quietly across the frozen landscape, creating a pattern that perfectly resembles the textured rind of a cantaloupe. These strange, rhythmic depressions are not craters formed by external impacts, but are instead the result of massive internal forces. This structure is formed by a process known as diaporism, where rising plumes of warmer, less dense material push upward through the heavy icy crust. Like a slow-motion bubbling in a lightless cauldron, the ground itself heaves and settles into these mesmerizing, organic-looking cells. It is a landscape of soft curves and undulating shadows, a geometric masterpiece created by the moon's own internal breathing. This structure of internal warmth manifests in one of the most spectacular displays of alien weather ever observed by human eyes. Delicate cryogenic geysers erupt silently from the southern polar cap, spraying dark plumes of nitrogen gas and carbon dust miles high into the pure, lightless vacuum. Unlike the boiling steam geysers of Earth, these eruptions are driven by the subtle heating of subsurface ices, creating a cold, majestic fountain. These wispy, dark streaks can drift for over 100 miles across the pale landscape, caught by the moon's thin, ghostly atmosphere. They resemble long, thin fingers of ink reaching across a canvas of white and pink frost, marking the locations of active vents in the icy crust. The plumes are exceptionally fragile and quiet, rising and falling in a slow-motion arc that follows the moon's low gravitational pull. If we were to stand near one of these vents, we would feel no heat, only the soft, cold vibration of gas escaping from the deep. It is a serene form of volcanism, a gentle exhaling of the moon's internal breath into the infinite blackness of space. These geysers are a reminder that even a world made of ice can possess a fiery, active spirit that refuses to be completely silenced by the cold. A wispy, almost imperceptible atmosphere of pure nitrogen clings tenuously to the moon's bright and highly reflective surface. This gaseous envelope is incredibly thin, yet it is thick enough to create a soft, hazy twilight and to carry the fine dust of the cryogenic geysers across the plains. It is a fragile layer of protection, a cold mist that stands between the icy ground and the absolute airless void of the stars. Surprisingly, this thin air plays a crucial role in the moon's global climate, allowing nitrogen frost to migrate from the poles to the equator in a slow, seasonal cycle. The pressure is so low that it would feel like a near vacuum to us, yet for the moon, it is a vital medium for the exchange of energy and material. It creates a subtle, atmospheric depth that softens the edges of the mountains and fills the craters with a pale, ghostly light. Notice how the rhythm of your own breathing has become a slow and effortless exchange, much like the moon's own thin atmosphere cycling its nitrogen frost. This layer of gas is a quiet, persistent presence, a cold and transparent veil that wraps the world in a state of permanent shivering grace. It is the final, delicate boundary of the captured giant, a breath of gas held tight against the chest of an icy world. Over the course of billions of years, the immense and relentless tidal forces exerted by the blue giant have performed a miracle of orbital engineering. When Triton was first captured from the Kuiper Belt, its path around the planet was likely a wild, elongated ellipse that brought it dangerously close before flinging it far into the void. Through a process of constant gravitational friction, these tides have slowly worked to circularize the moon's path into a perfectly smooth, round journey. This transition from a chaotic, wandering orbit to a stable, predictable circle required an unimaginable amount of internal energy, much of which was dissipated as heat within the moon's interior. This ancient heating era likely melted the moon's crust and initiated the unique geological activity that we still see traces of today. The orbit is now one of the most perfectly circular paths in the solar system, a testament to the planet's ability to tame the wildest of travellers. If we were to map the moon's position today, we would find a world that moves with the precision of a high-quality timepiece. The violence of its arrival has been replaced by a state of total, orbital serenity, a captured wanderer that has finally found its centre. It is a majestic example of cosmic order, where the overwhelming power of gravity has refined a chaotic encounter into a flawless, eternal circle. The icy crust of this world is so exceptionally bright and clean that the moon appears as a brilliant frosty jewel floating in the dark reaches of the outer system. It reflects a staggering amount of the scarce sunlight that manages to reach it, glowing with a radiance that makes it one of the most luminous objects in the solar system. This high reflectivity is due to the constant repaving of the surface, which covers old, dark materials with fresh, sparkling nitrogen frost. This structure of light creates a breathtaking visual contrast against the deep, bruised blue of the nearby planet and the absolute blackness of the space beyond. From a distance, the moon shines with a cool, silvered light, appearing as a point of pure, cold fire hanging in the void. It is a beacon of the outer reaches, a shimmering landmark that guides the eye through the lonely, lightless territory of the ice giant's domain. If we were to look closer at the surface, we would see a landscape that glitters like a field of crushed diamonds under the pale light of the distant sun. The shadows are sharp and deep, cutting through the brilliant white frost to create a world of intense visual clarity. It is a place of supreme, frozen beauty, a captured dwarf planet that has become the most radiant treasure in the planet's azure crown. Deep beneath the frozen and scarred exterior of this brilliant world, a hidden subsurface ocean of liquid water might quietly and persistently exist. While the surface temperature is low enough to freeze air into solid ice, the internal heat generated by radioactive decay and tidal friction could be enough to maintain a liquid layer. This would be a dark, pressurized sea, insulated from the vacuum of space by miles of protective icy crust. Surprisingly, the presence of such an ocean would mean that this distant, captured moon is one of the few places in the solar system where liquid water can be found in abundance. It would be an environment of absolute darkness and incredible pressure, a hidden world that has never seen the sun. This ocean could be rich in minerals and chemical energy, a secret reservoir of potential that remains tucked away in the deepest heart of the ice. As your body remains in a state of profound and steady rest, let your mind explore the possibility of this hidden, warm sea. It is a place of ultimate insulation, a liquid sanctuary where the harshness of the outer universe is completely and forever excluded. The moon is not just a ball of ice, but a container for a deep, lightless ocean that flows silently in the dark, a secret shared only with the core. Eventually, the very same tidal forces that circularized its orbit will lead to the moon's inevitable and spectacular transformation. Because Triton revolves in a retrograde direction, the gravitational interaction with the blue giant is slowly and relentlessly pulling the moon closer to the planet's surface. In several billion years, it will cross the invisible threshold known as the Roche limit, where the planet's gravity will become too strong for the moon's own structure to resist. This structure will not hold, and the gargantuan moon will be gently and systematically shattered into trillions of individual pieces of ice and rock. These fragments will spread out in a massive shimmering arc, eventually forming a magnificent new ring system that will dwarf anything currently seen in the solar system. The captured giant will return to the dust from which it came, reborn as a brilliant glowing crown for the azure world it once orbited. It is a beautiful and tragic conclusion to a journey that has lasted for eons, a final sacrifice of a world to create a new masterpiece of orbital geometry. The moon's long backward waltz will end not in a collision, but in a graceful dissolution, a scattering of jewels across the dark. This future ring will be the ultimate monument to the captured giant, a shimmering record of a world that chose to stay until it became a part of the planet itself. This sense of staying and enduring is perhaps most profoundly felt when one considers the staggering scale of the planet's movement through the vast, empty void. While terrestrial life measures existence in fleeting years and decades, this distant giant requires an astonishing 165 Earth years to complete just a single, massive revolution around its home star. Deep within your own quiet space, feel the profound weight of this endurance, letting your muscles settle into a state of total, unmoving rest as you contemplate such a vast span of time. Every single minute of this long journey is characterized by a steady and unwavering forward momentum that has persisted since the dawn of the planets. It is a world that has no need for haste, moving with a dignity and a scale that makes our own histories seem like momentary flickers of light in a vast, dark room. This slow-motion voyage is the ultimate expression of the universe's patience, a constant and rhythmic movement that defines the very edge of the sun's domain. Since the momentous evening of its mathematical discovery in the mid-19th century, the azure world has only recently finished one full, solitary orbit around the sun. When the planet finally returned to the same precise celestial coordinate where it was first identified by human eyes, using nothing but the laws of motion and a telescope, an entire era of human civilization had already risen and transformed. Surprisingly, the universe keeps its own time, regardless of the inventions and discoveries of the beings who inhabit the inner worlds. While we have mapped its surface and studied its rings, the planet has continued its first full circle around the sun since we first recognized its presence, moving with a silent and unbothered grace. It has watched from afar as we changed our world, serving as a steady and unchanging landmark in the darkness of the outer reaches. This slow revolution is a powerful symbol of continuity, a bridge of time that connects the past to the future in one long, unbroken azure arc. Tracing the absolute outer boundary of our major planetary system, the ice giant moves with a uniquely leisurely and dignified pace through the absolute coldest reaches of space. It exists as the final massive presence in the Sun's immediate family, a distant outpost where the gravitational pull of the solar hearth is stretched to its most tenuous and delicate limits. This immense orbital path marks the definitive frontier of the known worlds, a silent circle that encloses the bustling activity of the inner planets within a vast, cold and protective embrace. If we were to look closer at this boundary, we would find a realm where the sun is little more than a memory, and the empty void begins to exert its own dark influence. The planet glides through this transition zone with a calm that defies the extreme isolation of its position, acting as the outermost anchor for the entire solar architecture. It is a lonely but beautiful existence, where the world is free to drift in a sea of stars without the noise and light of the inner worlds. This boundary is not a wall, but a soft and shimmering edge, a final layer of blue atmosphere that separates the familiar from the infinite unknown. Because the journey around the sun is so exceedingly long, the atmospheric seasons on this blue world endure for over 40 long Earth years. A child born at the start of a Neptunian spring would be well into middle age before the first hints of summer heat began to touch the uppermost methane clouds. The world remains locked in its current state for decades, allowing the atmosphere to settle into a deep and stable equilibrium that is rarely disturbed. This seasonal endurance is a hallmark of the outer giants, a way of being that prioritizes stability and long-term balance over the frantic changes of the inner solar system. From this immense and lonely distance, the source of all life in our system appears as nothing more than an exceptionally bright, unblinking star hanging in the eternal black sky. The sun has lost its familiar blinding disk, becoming a concentrated pinprick of brilliant white light that offers no perceptible warmth to the frozen atmosphere. This dim, distant starlight is the only connection the planet has to the inner solar system, a faint and silvered reminder of the power that holds the world in its slow, patient orbit. This structure of light creates a world of permanent twilight, where the shadows are long and soft and the colours are muted into various shades of deep, bruised indigo. The lack of solar intensity means that the planet must rely on its own internal heat to drive its weather, making the sun a beautiful but secondary presence in the sky. To stand in the upper clouds would be to witness a sky of absolute blackness, where the stars are always visible and the sun is merely the brightest among them. It is a serene and dark environment, a place where the light is a gift rather than a constant, and the night is the true ruler of the world. The long, incredibly dark winters quietly blanket the poles in deeper shadows and even colder, more stagnant temperatures than anything found on the inner worlds. During these extended periods of darkness, which can last for nearly half a century, the axis of the planet is tilted entirely away from the weak light of the distant sun. The atmosphere in these regions becomes eerie and still, a frozen reservoir of gas and ice that waits with infinite silent patience for the slow return of the celestial light. This deep winter is not a season of storms and change, but a state of absolute unmoving preservation where the chemical processes of the clouds slow to a crawl. The cold becomes a physical presence, a heavy and enveloping stillness that permeates every layer of the polar atmosphere and settles deep into the pressurized mantle below. It is a sanctuary of ultimate cold, a place where the very concept of time seems to freeze alongside the methane and nitrogen. In this profound darkness, the planet finds its most solitary and peaceful expression, resting in the quietest corners of its vast and lonely orbit. Out here in the extreme outer solar system, the frenetic pace of the inner rocky planets gives way to a profound and absolute cosmic stillness. The rapid cycles of terrestrial weather, the quick succession of days and nights, and the constant movement of life are entirely absent, replaced by a deep and unhurried rhythm. As you rest in your own quiet environment, allow your mind to fully absorb this sense of absolute, cosmic quietness, feeling a deep connection to the unhurried movement of the outer giants. The planet glides through the dark with a calm that is infectious, a world that has mastered the art of being rather than doing. There are no sudden shocks or violent changes here, only the steady and predictable flow of gas and ice through the void. This stillness is the true character of the outer reaches, a place where the universe is allowed to simply exist in its most fundamental and tranquil state. The planet's massive gravity acts as a gentle guiding shepherd, shaping the slow and patient orbits of thousands of icy bodies that inhabit the vast and mysterious Kuiper belt. By exerting a steady and persistent pull on these distant travellers, the ice giant maintains the orderly structure of the outer solar system and prevents the icy debris of the early universe from scattering into the void. This structure of influence extends for billions of miles beyond the planet's visible surface, creating a vast and unseen network of orbital connections that binds the outer system together. The planet does not just move through space, it actively manages the environment around it, ensuring that the tiny frozen worlds of the Kuiper belt remain in their designated paths. It is a role of profound responsibility and quiet power, a celestial guardianship that has persisted for billions of years. This relationship between the giant and the dust is a beautiful example of the hidden order of the universe, where the most massive bodies provide the stability for the smallest to exist. In this distant and quiet realm, the sapphire giant stands as a serene and majestic sentinel, guarding the edge of the known and familiar worlds. It is the final massive gatekeeper of our system, a vibrant blue beacon that marks the definitive boundary between the sun's domain and the infinite starlit expanse of interstellar space. This role as a lonely guardian is a testament to the planet's endurance and its status as a cornerstone of the outer solar system's delicate gravitational and chemical balance. Surprisingly, the universe has placed this beautiful and powerful world at the very limit of our reach, as if to remind us that the most incredible wonders are often the hardest to find. The planet keeps a quiet watch over the void, its blue clouds shimmering with a soft and silvered light that speaks of ancient secrets and deep, internal fires. It is a world of transitions, a place where the familiar laws of the solar system begin to fade and the mysterious forces of the galaxy take hold. Standing as the last guard, it ensures that the interior of the system remains a sanctuary of light and life, while it faces the endless dark with a courageous and unmoving grace. As it glides effortlessly and silently through the endless night, the planet perfectly embodies the majestic and unhurried rhythm of the entire cosmos. Every slow-motion rotation, every decade-long seasonal shift, and every century-long orbit is a part of a much larger eternal dance that has continued since the birth of the stars. The planet is a symbol of the profound and enduring calm that lies at the heart of the universe, a world that exists in a state of perfect, unmoving, and absolute peace. This unhurried rhythm is a lesson in perspective, a reminder that the universe operates on scales of time and space that are far greater than anything we can experience on our own small world. The ice giant is a participant in this grand design, moving with a certainty and a grace that never falters or tires. It is a beautiful and quiet ending to the journey through the blue world, a final image of a planet that is at one with the silence and the dark. Carrying this image of the unhurried blue giant with you, find a symbol of the quiet and eternal peace that fills the vast reaches of the stars. Looking back across the entire breathtaking journey, from the supersonic winds of the azure expanse to the diamond-filled oceans of the hidden deep, a profound and final realization begins to emerge from the silent dark. We find that the true wonder of this distant world lies not in its individual mysteries, but in the perfect overarching harmony of immense chaos and profound, unmoving calm. It is a world where the most violent internal tempests and the most crushing pressures eventually settle into a beautiful, enduring balance that has persisted for billions of years. This grand synthesis serves as a powerful reminder that even in the most extreme and turbulent corners of the universe, there exists a fundamental and unwavering sense of order and peace. The blue giant is a masterpiece of cosmic integration, a place where fire and ice, light and shadow, and motion and stillness coexist in a state of absolute tranquil equilibrium. As you finally drift into the deepest reaches of your own quiet rest, let this final realization be the anchor for your journey through the stars. We are part of a universe that, despite its staggering complexity and raw power, is ultimately a sanctuary of balance and enduring majestic silence. The journey through the azure dark is now complete, and the same sense of balance found at the edge of the solar system is beginning to settle over your own physical form. Starting at the very tips of your toes, feel a heavy, warm wave of relaxation begin to wash away any remaining tension from the day. Let this soothing sensation spread through the arches of your feet and into your ankles, allowing them to go completely limp against the soft support of your bed. This quiet room is filled with a stillness that mirrors the deep interior of the ice giant, providing a sanctuary for your rest. As the relaxation moves upward, notice the muscles in your calves and shins becoming pleasantly heavy, sinking deeper into the mattress with every slow exhale. Your knees soften, and the large muscles of your thighs surrender their last bits of effort, finding a state of absolute effortless repose. Surprisingly, the body knows exactly how to mirror the tranquility of the deep, drawing the same steady peace into your hips and lower back. Every vertebrae in your spine begins to align and decompress, finding its own natural, comfortable center within the darkness. Your stomach and chest rise and fall in a rhythm that is as ancient and certain as a planetary orbit, moving without any conscious thought. If we were to look closer at the way you are resting, we would see a masterpiece of biological stillness, a perfect state of preparation for the night ahead. The warmth spreads into your fingers, palms and wrists, letting your arms rest like heavy weights by your sides. Your shoulders, which often carry the burdens of the day, now drop away from your ears, fully supported and completely free. The wave of relaxation continues its patient journey upward, softening the muscles of your neck and the hinge of your jaw. Let your tongue rest gently in the floor of your mouth and feel the tiny muscles around your eyes and across your forehead smooth out into a state of total clarity. Every part of your being is now in a state of harmonious alignment, ready to drift away from the thoughts of distant worlds and into the here and now. The air in this room is cool and still, providing a gentle and refreshing feeling for the steady, unhurried flow of your breath. With each slow inhalation, you draw in a profound and total quiet, and with each long exhalation, you release the concerns of the day entirely. The fabric of the sheets feels wonderfully soft and cool against your skin, a familiar and comforting texture that anchors you to this precise moment of deep rest. Everything outside this immediate private place has faded into a distant and unimportant blur, leaving only the soothing rhythm of your heart and the welcoming softness of your pillow. The mattress supports your frame completely and unconditionally, taking every ounce of your weight so that you do not have to hold yourself up anymore. You are safe, you are warm, and the surrounding darkness is a kind, protective blanket that invites you to finally and fully let go of everything else. The house is quiet, the room is still, and your body has become a perfect sanctuary of recovery and rest. This is the time for total peace and for the beautiful surrender to the night. Sleep is a heavy and warm tide that is rising to meet you, carrying you away from the shore of waking life and into a deep, quiet rest. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.